Damn it. Hold on. Why is it? I'll try that again. Dun, 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 dun. We're back. Oh, that was embarrassing. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Tower Babble podcast. As always, I'm Julian Misha. I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza and Jeremy Cozier.
Hello.
And this is episode 160. I know we don't often say that, but whenever it reaches a round number, it's nice to remind everyone. That's episode 160. We've been doing this for almost 7 years. And we like to talk about...
7 years?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jesus.
And we like to talk about the latest in film and television news. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We've been kind of saving it up. We did a couple special episodes. We just did our Toby's episode, our annual Toby's episode, where we talked about our top or our favorites from the previous year. So was exciting and always is exciting. And so I recommend you go find that in the feed. Will be just below this one. We did 2 episodes, one for film and television, one for games, and there might be a little bit of games talk in here. Just warning.
See what happens.
A little later at the end. It's exciting. It relates to movie stuff, so I think it's fair. Okay, so we'll get to that in just a second. And before we do, I'll just remind everyone to follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter is back. I can finally announce to everybody we got our Twitter back. Couldn't tell you why it went down. Couldn't tell you why it was suspended. Don't know. They released the most generic message of all time. So we've changed some of our settings around. Maybe that'll change it. Who knows? Anyway, it's back at Tower Babblecast on Twitter. Best place to keep up with us. And head over to facebook.com/Tower Babblecast. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, head over to towerbabble.ca or towerbabblepodcast.com and find everything we do, as well as to contact us. You can also email us at towerbabblepodcast@gmail.com. Okay. Oh, that's a lot to get out of the way, to get to the most important news story of the week, I think, which is that Ana de Armas and Ben Affleck have broken up. And it's really upsetting. This was just for me and Jeremy. Just a moment. just a moment to like just think back to the better days. You know?
Yeah.
Jeremy, did you see the hilarious picture of the cardboard cutout in his garbage can?
Yeah.
I know.
And people said that it was Casey Affleck throwing it out for him, disguised in the whatever he was wearing there in the mask and hat.
That's so funny. Okay, we're not. That's not this.
For the love of God,
we're not doing that. But I thought that would be a pretty funny way to kick things off, lighten the mood, you know. Anywho, we're gonna start with movies like we always do, and we're gonna talk about
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years. Think about that. Let that sink in. You can't even get every episode. Our feed only goes back 100 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to actually go to the podcast.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It is I think for the best. It really buries the really crappy stuff. If you really want to find it, it's available on the website, including our very first episode. If you look way back, that was the day that Nintendo announced they weren't going to E3 anymore. It was like breaking news story that day. Yeah.
So, movies.
Yeah, movies like we always do. So there's a lot of shakeups in the movie schedule. Obviously, it has been since COVID started, and that's continuing. There's like another round. It's kind of like another. Just kind of like the virus had another peak. We're having a second wave of movie delays, and I'm not going to mention all of them because there's way too many. But the biggest one is No Time to Die has moved again, the James Bond one. And the reason I think that's the biggest one is because it was kind of the first movie that was a casualty of this whole thing and had to move. It was like ready to go out. That's how we get that "Welcome to the ladies and gentlemen, the weekend" meme from Daniel Craig. Because he went out to promote the movie on SNL, and the movie never came out.
That's hilarious.
So, this is kind of like a milestone one for me. I kind of you check in on to see, hey, is No Time to Die still coming out? Okay, well everything's on track then. So no, it's not anymore. It's now moved to October 8th, 2021, which is almost a full year from its original release date, which was my birthday last year. It's really upsetting, actually, that they moved it. I thought, Anyway. So that's kind of just the news story that there's an ongoing pandemic, obviously, and it's still affecting movie theaters. Do you guys, with the a little bit of optimism, things looking up a little bit, do you think chances are people will be back in movie theaters before the end of the year?
Within 2021, yes.
Okay.
I would like to say yes. I mean, the vaccines thus far seem to be working, and things are going to slowly but surely get back on track. I
Right.
think. I hope. That might be wishful thinking. I don't know. I think it'll be the tail end of the year before things really get back to closer to normal. But
Sure.
Yeah.
I just feel like they were willing to keep them open for a long time, so it feels like they might be willing to open them up again a little earlier, as long as because when I went to see a movie, when I went to see Tenet, there was nobody within like 25 feet of me practically at that movie theater. Now, obviously, that's not sustainable, right? But I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that we'll get to movie theaters again before the end of the year. Dune is supposed to be at the end of the year. That's a movie that needs to be seen
has to be.
in theaters. And speaking of movies that need to be seen in theaters, Godzilla vs. Kong had a trailer. And this is a movie that's we're not going to be able to see in theaters, which I think is a real shame. It's coming to HBO Max, I think in March. Jeremy, did you see the trailer?
Yeah, I watched it.
What do you think of this Royal Rumble?
I mean, yeah, it looks entertaining. But when you talk about movie theaters, like it's definitely, it kind of sucks that you have to watch it at home. Because the scope of these massive monsters I think would really translate through the theater experience.
Well, I mean, it's not even close. I mean, I was funny that this comes up. I was talking to my boss at work, and he used to do sales. He was in the movie industry of some kind. I don't remember. It was around tech, but basically saying it's all BS because if you're engrossed enough in anything, you can't tell the difference between a small screen and a big screen if you're engrossed enough. But it's like, sure, I because we've all felt that, right? Like we've all watched stuff on little screens. We don't remember what size screen we watch stuff on generally, unless it's like it was an IMAX screen. That's memorable. Yeah. So
that reminds me of a funny tweet where someone tweeted that when they were watching Dunkirk, the way it was meant to be, and it was on the back seat of
right.
of a seat on a plane.
Yeah, that's so funny because especially funny for Nolan fans because there's something he takes the movie theater experience very seriously. And speaking, we'll talk about Nolan a little bit later in this episode. But Dan, what did you think of this Godzilla versus King Kong trailer?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Jeremy. This movie is clearly it's all spectacle, and it deserves to be on a big screen. These are larger than life monsters. This is like a classic blockbuster type of movie that should be in a theater. So, I mean, it's a popcorn flick. I thought both in the latest iterations, I thought both Godzilla and King Kong are good guys. I think this is how it worked out in the old school one as well. I thought there was more of a size disparity, but I guess they've just
so they've apparently they addressed this, right? Because obviously Godzilla's massively huge in the new Godzilla stuff, like bigger than like a city, like it's crazy.
But in this,
right?
Godzilla's shrunken down.
I think the other way. You're right because they're on top of the.
I think I've been seeing that Kong has just been growing or something like that.
Yeah, so they set Kong Skull Island in the 80s or 70s or whatever it was, so that they gave it time for him to grow into the full size Kong.
And then you have a movie poster where like they're touching his like nose and like their torso is like as tall or maybe half as tall as his head. And then there's in the trailer you see him pointing at like the girl or whatever.
Yeah, and his fingernails.
She is like the finger is like 20 times as big as her. So
right.
It is way bigger.
It is crazy. Have you guys seen King of Monsters, the sequel, like the Godzilla sequel?
I haven't actually seen the first one either.
It's very pretty, but it's pretty boring. Like it's like there's nothing.
Well, sure.
Yeah. It's like I think the biggest indictment of a giant monster movie is that it's boring. You know, I don't feel like they did a great job of capturing the scale of how big those monsters are in the second one, just because there's so many giant monsters, you start to lose perspective. You know, they're just fighting alongside on a mountain, but it's
kind of the same challenge the Transformers movies had. Like, yes, it's a giant robot fighting another giant robot. At a certain point, it just becomes repetitive, and it just becomes the same imagery over and over again.
But that being said, watching Kong punch Godzilla right in the face at the end of that trailer is pretty sweet. You know.
Were you guys like laughing at all during the trailer?
Obviously,
okay.
when the guy says
well, anytime anyone says anything, I laugh. Basically,
yeah. It's, Kong or Godzilla's hurting people, and we don't know why. What a ridiculous thing to say. Anyway, you're right. It's basically anytime anyone opens their mouths in that movie. But they're like, I think it's intentional. They go for that like really like over the top, like overly dramatic
cheesy
dialogue.
Yeah.
And it worked in the second one. There's some pretty like ridiculous moments. Charles Dance is in the second one. And he's talking about like this, like he's like an eco-terrorist basically. And he's like super profound, but it's like it's a Godzilla movie, bro. You know? Okay. So Paramount, speaking of Transformers, they are moving forward with their new Transformers film. It's supposed to be live action. And despite people wanting or hoping that Bumblebee would be like the setup for a new Transformers universe, I think the rumor is that they're going to cast that one aside. It's a prequel to Bay's stuff, and that they're going to start fresh with a whole new Transformers thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little conflicted.
But it's a prequel to Bay's stuff?
No, the new one will be completely separate, and that Bumblebee will be considered a prequel to Bay's stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense.
So for me, I'm a little conflicted because, yeah, I'm excited that they're going to probably take a more traditional approach to Transformers. Maybe nothing quite as over the top as that CG anime stuff that's been going on Netflix. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it's that different and those same characters are all involved. I mean, they kind of took the core cast of the G1 series.
Well, it's likely going to be that same core group.
Right.
It always is.
You know, you don't want to see like a Maximals versus Predacons movie.
Well, it's maybe. I mean, I'd be open to it. I actually don't care too much about Transformers, but so I don't really have much of an opinion either way. I don't think.
That's funny. I feel like I'm getting more into the lore of it. There's a lot of lore in Transformers stuff that's exciting, like how Beasties or Beast Wars, depending on where you were, is like set far future in the G1 timeline of everything. It's like there's a lot of different series that like fit together in different ways, and I don't know. I think it's fascinating. I like when characters can be updated with new designs all the time because new vehicles come out. That's all fun. But then the classic stuff always survives. So I think that's what's going to happen here. The classic stuff is going to be what they concentrate on again. They'll probably take a more traditional design approach, less the kind of like million gears and parts turning inside of.
So you think we're going back to like Optimus as like the semi-truck, the red
Absolutely,
and blue?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You have to differentiate what's kind of come before, I think.
And I think you'll like, because there was classic characters, right, in the original Michael Bay stuff, right? But they didn't look anything like they did in like the cartoons, right? Bumblebee is the core example, right? You know.
Well, a very understandable change.
Yeah, I suppose. Did you
remember
remember
what
what
sell
Bumblebee
a lot
looks
more
like?
Toys too.
He looks more like a beetle. He's got like little horns on his head, and he's completely yellow. And yeah,
because the car itself,
right? It's so funny, but yeah. So like, obviously that's a core example. But there's like a lot of the like Megatron, for instance, I don't think is a memorable look. Like the Megatron's actual design in the original Transformers Michael Bay movie is kind of forgettable, generic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I think you want to get more of those core classic designs, big giant gun on the arm. That's really kind of stuff you're looking for Megatron, right? And more, and probably more of it too, because he wasn't really in much of in any of the movies. And that might be because the voice actor wasn't that excited about doing a lot of that work, Hugo Weaving. But that's okay. So I don't know. I would like to see like sound, shockwave, and like all that kind of stuff done in a more traditional way. So that's what I'm guessing is going to happen. So we'll see. I'll probably watch it. Let's put it this way. They burned a lot of bridges, Transformers did, but I'm willing to give a reboot a chance. You know, that because Michael Bay is not involved. As long as he stays very far away, you know,
it's probably for the best.
Okay, I put this story in here just because I think it just tickles me. We can move on pretty quick. Seth MacFarlane wants to remake The Naked Gun with Liam Neeson in the lead role. It's brilliant.
It's insane,
brilliant. It's like. It's so wrong. It shouldn't work. It reminds me of the skit he does about
Life's Too Short.
Right.
Liam Neeson does play like a really good straight man for this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I can see it. It makes a lot of sense. Like he's not a comedian.
Right.
You know, he's not a comic actor.
No.
But at the same time, he could sell that.
Neither
role.
was Leslie Nielsen apparently before he went to The Naked Gun. He was a serious drama actor, and then of course Leslie Nielsen has obviously amazing comedic timing. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But but in The Naked Gun, he plays the straight man, and crazy stuff is happening all around him.
Right.
Right. So I think you could do the same thing. That would be And like I think that's a series that could use like sure, I would the original still be there. You can always watch it, but if a new version, bring it to the young folks. Sure, I'm into it. Same thing with Airplane. Make a new Airplane. That'd be hilarious. Jeremy, what do you think of that idea?
Yeah, it sounds funny. I'm like kind of giggling just thinking about it.
Okay, so Netflix has surpassed 200 million subscribers and took in $6.6 billion in revenue in Q4 last year. This news comes off the tail of around the same time as their release of their 2021 film slate, where they're basically pitching us that there's going to be a new exciting movie for everyone every week and it's pretty crazy how big it is. Like there's a Western in here, Dan. Like that's how far they're going. Only one sci-fi movie though.
I did notice that.
That's kind of you'd think that they're the algorithm would be pointing people like to more sci-fi, but maybe that's my bubble. I don't know. Sorry, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Just to be clear, we're reading off a Variety article that has like a list of all the movies that are going to be coming out. It's quite a few. We're not going to read the entire list.
Absolutely not. They're just words at this point.
I mean, also like it's a lot, but nothing. Munich, I guess, stands out. Nothing else is really standing out to me. If you want to keep strolling,
okay. Let's go to the drama section. There's like some of these are unnamed movies too, which is really weird because like they're coming out this year. I don't know how that you.
That's
get
one
to
thing
this
that
point.
Netflix is good for though.
Yeah.
Like you can find those hidden gems. I think that's what they call it actually on their search page.
Oh, really?
Hidden gems or something like that. But yeah, like it's quantity over quality for the most part, but there are quality shows in there. You just kind of have to dig around a bit.
Moxie. Now that interests me. Thunder Force. I don't know what that is, but I'll give it a shot. Night Books for the whole. That one's for the whole family, and musicals too. And The Rock is obviously involved. So the point being here. Wait, what? Extraction is Netflix's most most viewed original film. That's crazy. I'm sorry. I just reeled my whole story to find there's a whole new story underneath.
What movie is that?
I think it's not Liam Neeson. It's hold on. Please hold.
Chris Hemsworth.
Exciting radio. This is a black market mercenary who has nothing to lose is hired to rescue the kidnapped son of an imprisoned international crime lord. But in the murky underworld of weapons dealers and drug traffickers, an already deadly mission approaches the impossible. Directed by Sam Hargrave. Stars Chris Hemsworth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a Joe and Anthony Russo picture. They're producers on the film. So, generic action movie. We're talking this like that is the most generic
absolutely
action movie you can get. It's just a guy in a helicopter and the word extraction. It could mean anything.
Just if you want to flip back to that page though, like the data is kind of weird. It says that 99 million views for that movie, but that's people who have watched at least 2 minutes of it. So it's not necessarily a great indicator of whether or not it's a popular movie.
That's a good point. And why? Who would ever judge whether or not you watched a movie by using the 2-minute line?
It's definitely not a good movie.
Yeah, it can't be. Yeah.
Well, we don't know that. It might be a good movie.
It's the star power. It's the availability of it.
That's probably a movie that is designed by an algorithm, right?
Yeah.
That's most likely to be.
Right. This is it might as well be called the Green Zone 2.
Mm-hmm.
In the Green Zone
we're so often, I feel like. Recently.
Because Green Zone for me is the quintessential generic action movie. I remember elements of it, but I don't remember any specifics. I just remember just kind of this like it fits into this generic time in when like the shaky cam action movie was like the rage, right? And I think it just I don't know how many people think of the Green Zone.
Killed it.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, wait. So 70% of the film completed. Bird Box.
Is 80 million.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
You see, Extraction is not on that list with the 70% completed.
They just stopped watching it.
Interesting. Irishman is on there.
Yeah,
40 million.
Box.
I'm impressed that many people made it more than 70% through Irishman because that's a long ass movie.
But that doesn't mean they didn't stop at 70%. They got to 70 and they just stopped there. Like this is too long.
They got to 70% and they had to have a meal.
Like I'm sorry. They forgot to continue watching the movie. They think they got to the end. Oh man, this is why you need to bring like full on like intermission breaks into these movies. Like they need to have like, hey, take some time, go have some food, come back. There's going to be another part to this, Anyway, Netflix is doing really, really well, and I think it's a net pardon the pun. It's a net positive because it creates really strong competition amongst the streaming services to create. This is where the question is: is it more content or better content?
Well, they certainly look at it as more content primarily.
Well, but the good content is what keeps people and what draws people.
Ideally, yes, right? But
actually, no. I think it is the good content gets people in, and then lots of content keeps people around. Because you might not watch half of those, maybe not even a quarter, but you like knowing it's there. You know?
Yeah, you like having the option.
Marcos in the chat, always good to see Marcos here. 70% then overnight intermission for me. Yeah, I mean that movie. I remember thinking like, man, this movie is long. It is. It's not. It's obvious. Okay. Where were we? Netflix. Okay, John Wick 4 and 5 will be shooting back to back, and they are hoping to start filming this year, according to Ian McShane. Dan, is the most shocking part of the story that there's a fourth and fifth movie in the works?
That's not shocking at all. I'm not surprised. They look like badass movies. I haven't yet forced myself to go watch them.
This isn't one of those situations where like we're telling you this is a movie.
No. I believe every word. I believe they look like amazing movies, and I'm certain actually that I'll enjoy.
This
them.
isn't a Looper situation.
Yeah.
Is there a new Looper? Do we have a new Looper? I don't think we do. I don't think we do.
It's probably anything Star Wars at this point.
What are you talking about? Listen, if you don't like it, don't watch it, I guess. I don't know. Okay. Mortal Kombat. You guys got really excited about this.
Yeah.
There was the director's like, get ready. There's gonna be some exciting stuff coming, and then he released.
It was an actor. He just tweeted.
Sorry.
He said something like, "Tomorrow will be flawless" or something like that.
Right.
And then they released a bunch of images.
We all still it's an article. Did you guys read the article?
No, I didn't. No, Jeremy, no.
Okay. You just shared the pictures. You didn't share the article. Yeah, we were all
trust you
to
keep up with this. I expect you guys to keep up with this stuff. I keep up with everything else. I just rely on you guys for like Mortal Kombat and like Interstellar or something.
What a weird.
No, Expanse. That's what I'm thinking.
Expanse.
Yeah.
Which
this movie is going to be a very fun movie.
Yeah.
Like even if it's cheesy, I feel like it's going to be a good time.
I want it to be cheesy. Like I hope it is cheesy.
Well, I mean, it has to be a little bit over the top.
Yeah.
Regardless, I think. Just to really nail it.
I want it to hit the same level of cheese that Cobra Kai hits, which is actually the perfect balance of cheese. And it takes itself super seriously, but in the context of the larger world, it still can be seen as like, this is a little silly, you know?
So Mortal Kombat shouldn't be like that. It should be taken a bit more seriously than that. Like, it's not a comedy at the end of the day. It's not it's not a parody either. This is an actual, story about people who go to a fighting tournament. Cobra Kai is a parody.
It's just badass people going to a tourney.
Cobra Kai is not a parody either.
The way that this one is filmed, it certainly seems like it. It's like winking at it. Anyways, whatever. But Mortal Kombat shouldn't be like that. Either way, though, these images that they released are perfect to me as a Mortal Kombat fan. Like, most exciting was the picture of Jackson. It looks like he's wrestling with Shao Kahn's hammer. Yeah. That's exciting. We don't know yet what the timeline is, right? We don't know if it's like the first tournament or if they're doing something new.
It's for sure the first tournament.
You would assume so, but I don't know. I don't know anything about.
It's the only story they tell over and over and over again.
And we have the small glimpse of Sub-Zero creating the ice sword as well.
Wait, it's the ice sword, or is it
an ice sword?
Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure if it was like a special.
Well, it's one of his intros in one of the games. Is he creates the sword in front of his face, and that same imagery was recreated for the
and there was a GIF, I think.
But then right before that, you see, like I'm guessing a Scorpion like wield like a real sword. It's like a super small glimpse. Like it was just the images, and then they had like an HBO like sizzle reel or HBO Max sizzle reel, and they included that little bit of Sub-Zero creating the sword and then Scorpion holding the sword, but like you don't see his face or anything.
Yeah, so it's not a lot to go off of. It's just a couple images, but either way.
But I mean, didn't you just pretty good?
did you not decipher who who it was based on that one image?
Yeah, but that was just distinguishing which Sub-Zero, because as you'll all know,
everyone knows
there's two Sub-Zeros, the older brother, younger brother,
Bihan
and Kuai Liang.
It's everyone,
so
everyone knows.
This Sub-Zero is the first, which likely means that it is the first tournament because it's the first. It's Bihan as Sub-Zero. He doesn't have a scar.
And we know this because
what?
You know,
I think the Sub-Zero does have the scar though, doesn't he?
Does he? It didn't look like it in the image.
So. Well, there's another image where he's wrestling like out of their ninja clothes, and
it's almost like we need more information about this movie.
Well, that's so funny, but just so much speculation based off of these still images. Obviously, you guys are super excited.
I was pausing every frame of like the GIF or whatever. To
frame of the GIF
to try to like piece together his face mask, because like that's like a super.
Well, yeah, obviously you want to see that. Yeah,
and it looks like super cool just from the little glimpse we get. Like it looks very detailed. Like they put a lot of effort into it, because the first couple of movies, the effort into those things was non-existent.
No, I mean there's some charm in the cheesy costumes. To be fair,
much lower budget back then.
Does Scorpion Say get over here in this movie?
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Guaranteed.
Dude, we're getting fatalities for the first time. Like real ones, like over the top ones, and they pulled some. They've picked some from the games too.
Like, do you think it's gonna be like, how gory do you think we're talking in this? Like, do you think it's like this is crazy? Like, this is gonna be known for how gory it is.
This movie is gonna live up to what Mortal Kombat means. Like when you think of
gore.
Yeah, blood, the violence, everything.
Yeah. That's basically what sold it originally too, which is crazy. So that would be kind of cool. It goes full circle there. Then it comes. Maybe people say you shouldn't watch it; it's too gory, and then there's like a whole.
It won't be as extreme as the games,
no,
but it'll be more like the games for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Anything left on Mortal Kombat, or is we still waiting for the trailer?
Need more. Yeah.
Okay.
Can't wait for that trailer.
Hook it to my veins, they say. Okay. Creed 3 will be directed by Michael B. Jordan. Did we talk about this? I feel like we might have talked about this.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's happening. That's an old one, so I'm just gonna get that out of there. Just gonna delete that. Oh, this is interesting, and this goes off of something I was gonna mention later, which is the fact that I watched Sonic the Hedgehog the movie, and I gotta say, really fun, quite charming of a film, and apparently Knuckles is gonna appear in Sonic 2, so. That's exciting, right? Dan, you like Knuckles. You like Sonic and Knuckles, right? Come on.
Sure. I like them all as a kid. I haven't seen the latest Sonic movie. Mm-hmm. It's not something that excites me. It's not a movie that's.
Is it Knuckles or Tails?
Tails appears in the post-credit scene of the original movie. I didn't want to spoil that, but I just did.
I didn't. You did.
The movie's from last summer, and it's been widely discussed, the Tails thing now.
It's whatever.
But anyway, so they already set up that Tails is looking for Sonic, so I guess Knuckles will appear, create the little trio. No one knows any character after that, though. Those are the only characters that I'm aware of in the Sonic lore, so that probably does it, right?
There were like later ones. There was the Shadow Sonic,
right?
And like some of the TV shows, there's that white animal one.
If there's that Bat Lady.
Yeah, I don't know.
If they get to Shadow, I'll tell you what, I'm back in. I haven't been out, but I mean maybe two, maybe I'm out after 2, but they get to Shadow, I'm back in for sure. There's no way you don't want to go Shadow, and he's on a surfboard for some reason on a city street for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, and Jim Carrey's back probably. I think you have to get Jim Carrey back for that. You seemed genuinely excited about that role for some reason. He was good in it. I'll give him that. Really creepy. Anyway, so that's that. Okay, so let's get on to some Disney stuff and Marvel and Star Wars and all that. So Kevin Feige, reveals that with the start of Phase 4, with the release of WandaVision, that it's going to be all about beginnings, quote unquote, and it will not feature an Avengers movie, though the Avengers will return, quote unquote, at some point. So, what do you guys make of that?
Well, I mean, I think they've been clear about wanting to focus more on like the small screen iterations of these stories. It's weird. I mean, like, I think what that means, though, is that they won't call it an Avengers movie. There will still be large team-up movies.
Well, yeah.
It just won't be Avengers 5.
That's the new normal.
Right. So I mean, they're still going to be the exact same thing. It's just the nomenclature is changing. That's what I read into that.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think Avengers has its own trappings. It's about the group coming together around one singular cause. I think you can have team ups that don't feel as grand as the Avengers team ups does, right? I think it's about the grandeur there with the Avengers movies.
Sure.
Right. So you think that there's gonna be some like big team up movie that's just not Avengers?
Yeah.
Guardians maybe, or I don't
well,
know. Maybe
Doctor
some other name.
Strange. Doctor Strange probably is gonna feel like a Civil War type moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wanda's rumored to be the villain in that movie.
Yeah, or at least just a big part. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like
that makes sense. Yeah.
We'll talk about WandaVision, I think, a little bit later. I think we're all up to date with WandaVision. We don't want to spoil it, so we'll save it for closer to the end when we get to kind of what we've been watching. But I've been really liking it, and what they're setting up Wanda for is really exciting. I'll just say that for now. Save our speculation for a little bit later. So Chris Evans is reportedly returning to the MCU as Captain America after publicly saying he was done. This is all over. Yada yada yada. I mean, who knows what's what? They lied to us about the movie, about stuff all the time for our own benefit. They would argue, but whatever. Chris Evans on Twitter says, "Hey, it's news to me." Shrug emoji. Also doesn't necessarily mean anything. Here's the problem: they created a web of lies. Now you can't trust anything that they say. So it's all rumor, but I think it's likely that we'll be seeing Chris Evans return as Cap. What do you guys make of that? Does that excite you at all or disappoint you, Jeremy?
I think I've been pretty vocal on how I've said that I believe that RDJ and Chris Evans would always come back. I just thought it would be at least
like a few years,
even 5-6 years, if they really want to
make
blow
a splash.
people's minds, basically. Yeah. But I think with all the announcements, all the TV shows, all the content, you look at some of the names like Secret Invasion, and how that's such a large scale type event in the comics, but they're just kind of utilizing that in a small space there, but can definitely set up for bigger things too. I just think that it'd be really cool if they have some sort of way to tie everything back to those original Avengers and make them relevant again. So I'm all for it and I think they wouldn't do it. Chris Evans wouldn't sign up for it. He's been very vocal about that. It has to make sense. It has to pay off. He doesn't want to ruin what they accomplished from Iron Man to Endgame.
So I think that's a great answer, Jeremy. I'm just kind of, this is just occurring to me now, this idea that maybe it is the TV stuff that is more exciting to Chris Evans because it allows you to explore the character in a less superficial way, and I think WandaVision is a great example. We're getting to kind of through a lens see the Wanda and Vision relationship in a more close up, in a way that maybe there's 5 minutes of screen time for them in all the Avengers movies together, maybe that might be generous, of them together. So that provides you the opportunity to tell a very different type of story. Maybe Chris Evans is like, hey, I have a specific kind of Cap story that needs longer form storytelling than a Captain America movie can provide. And maybe that's what's exciting him. I don't know. What do you think about Cap coming back?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by coming back. Like, I feel like we've heard similar rumors about Josh Brolin coming back as Thanos, but largely a lot of that stuff is tying into like time travel and multiverse and like, so it's an iteration of a character. It's not like there's going to be another Thanos centric villain movie.
Right.
It's that Thanos is going to make appearances. Now it's different for Chris Evans because he was completely out.
Yeah,
he was done. So for him to choose to come back means that it is probably more Captain America centric in the form of potentially a show. But we'll see what happens with Falcon and Winter Soldier, right? It really depends on how that show plays out.
I think that'll give us most of the answers. And the thing that's really fascinating about the timing here is that of the story is that we should have been about the time when that series would be wrapping up. So that was supposed to be the original. Well, I guess maybe that was actually last year. It's hard to say exactly when, but either way. Captain America, Winter Soldier, whatever. Falcon, Winter Soldier would be ending right about now. We'd kind of have a little bit more answers around this, and then maybe this was supposed to coincide with maybe some sort of revelation that we were supposed to be getting at the end of that show. Because like if you're gonna announce Cap coming back, that seems like an appropriate place to do it. So we'll see. One of the things that I find really interesting, it was kind of an aside, but it's related to something we'll discuss later. But there's basically these MCU shows. They keep talking about them like, don't think of them as TV stuff. They're just as big as the movies. Everything is just as big. And there's something like there's way more effect shots in WandaVision apparently than there was in Avengers Endgame, which is hard to believe.
Well, you look at what's the budget? Like, I'm pretty sure WandaVision is I think it's bigger than Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Like they put a lot into that one.
Well, there's so much that we haven't seen of that show yet, so it's that's hard to say. But you look at Falcon Winter Soldier, it's just much more traditional. MCU. When you think MCU, you think that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously the actions there, these characters that we know. So I don't know. The book or the chapter of MCU on television has yet to be written. We're just getting started here. It's really hard to take any learnings yet after only 3 episodes of WandaVision. So, we'll just kind of keep an eye on it. I would never ever be shocked to see a comic book character return from the dead. So,
happens all the time.
that's just not like there's when you attach the actors playing them and choosing to return to the roles, that kind of adds a layer to it that's interesting. But ultimately, man, there's no rules in comic books. You can do anything you want.
You're returning from the dead. Maybe you're a long-lost clone. Maybe somebody who had a twin the whole time.
Right.
Maybe they're from another universe.
Yeah, exactly. Literally
maybe they're a Skrull. It keeps going.
That was the joke, by the way, that when he said it's news to me, that IGN tweeted Skrull confirmed.
Oh.
Which I think is fun. I like the idea that we can kind of start speculating about who's Skrulls and who's not because we know Secret Invasion's coming. And we know they're going to set up some of that kind of gotcha, they're a Skrull the whole time, which is exciting. But Kevin Feige talked about, we can't do it at the same scale we did it on the big screen or in the comic books even. So for that storyline specifically, so they're shrinking it down into what Nick Fury's doing, I guess. Okay, so there is a R-rated Deadpool 3 on the way. It's coming to the MCU. This is also confirmed by Kevin Feige. He's been out in the press lately, obviously. Yeah. And Ryan Reynolds is currently overseeing the script. We don't know when the release date is yet, but pretty exciting. They're calling it again. They specifically called it Deadpool 3. They said it's in the MCU. So it's there's kind of some keywords dropped here.
Yeah, there's 4 pieces of good news there. It's
right.
R-rated. It's still Deadpool. It's Deadpool 3. It is part of the MCU, and Ryan Reynolds is still involved.
Yeah, which is that's really the quadruple whammy you're looking for. Although I could do without having to be in the MCU. You could kind of finish the story without it.
That's almost the most important one for me. That is what's most intriguing about this is how are they going to fit Deadpool into the MCU?
I guess to me it's he's the easiest one. You just address it straight up, and you kind of just call it out. And
that
then you
only
can
works
move
for
on.
the Deadpool movie. That doesn't work for the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, that's true. But I think depending on how WandaVision turns out, that might necessarily be an issue. We'll get to that. Jeremy, what do you make about Deadpool 3 coming to the MCU?
Yeah, it's awesome. Rumored for a long time, and then there was even recent stories where Ryan Reynolds was inking a deal that was one of the biggest ones since RDJ. So they're backing up the Brinks trucks to his house, and he's gonna deliver.
Man, Van Wilder has come a long way.
Yeah,
he was in a lot of duds. Remember, he was in R.I.P.D. Oh man. Jason Telford also in the chat. Good to see a friend of the show. He says, "Wouldn't that show be the most likely place for Chris Evans to show up?" I think he's talking about Falcon Winter Soldier. Yeah, I think that is the most.
I don't know though.
Place.
I get the impression from that show that show is Endgame and then moving forward. That show's not going to go back in time, whereas a lot of the other stuff is playing around with time.
Right, and I guess the speculation if he was coming back, you could reintroduce him there, or at least tease him in there. But for me, I think that does a lot of work to undercut, I think, what the show is trying to do, which is talk about and deal with the legacy of the Captain America and his shield. And if you bring him back in that same series, it's it would be very comic book to do that. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But it's one of the criticisms of comic book storytelling is that it's so cyclical that it's hard that permanent things like death feel less important. So you have to start writing around that stuff. And so like this change to the characters having to deal with his loss, it was undone within the same season. Kind of feels cheap, I think.
Just because he shows on the show doesn't mean the loss is necessarily undone, though. It's
Right.
in what capacity, right?
You don't know, but I'm just saying it makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense at the same time in my mind. Okay, Matt Damon has apparently been cast in Thor: Love and Thunder. He did, if you guys recall, he did play an Asgardian in Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, but that doesn't count.
He was like that actor playing Loki, and that's so fun. Like Matt Damon keeps popping up in like the funniest places in this stuff, and I don't know if he just gets a kick out of just like making cameos in these and just like being that guy. It's Matt Damon, because there was a while for like, you know, Matt Damon would just show up in your movie at the end for some reason. Interstellar, speaking of. You know, that's pretty funny. I don't know if maybe. What are the chances he is playing the same character? This random Asgardian actor guy.
They have to be slim to none, right? The chances of that.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Well, why not?
I mean, no, but okay, fine.
If
Maybe
it's
he
gonna
is.
be-
It wouldn't be
for
news
another
if he
huge
is.
comedic moment.
Well, I think Matt Damon. Yeah, I mean, if he was just doing a cameo, I don't think it would be revealed that he was signing on.
Mhm.
It were a big deal. If he's signing on as an actual, you know, he's gonna have an actual role in the film. It's less likely that he's playing the same character. Also, there's not a lot of Asgardians left alive. You know, after Ragnarok,
Maybe
and
it is the same character. It's still a Thor movie, right? You don't know anything about that character. He was acting at that point. Maybe he
who
has
knows,
other
right?
stuff going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. The idea of Matt Damon being in a Taika Waititi Thor movie is kind of silly to me, and I'm into it. Okay, speaking of the opposite of silly, or speaking of silly, let's talk about the opposite. I don't know. Ethan Hawke. He's a very serious actor.
Sure. Yeah.
He's set to play the villain in Marvel's Moon Knight series, which already has Oscar Isaac set to play Moon Knight. Ethan Hawke, outspoken against the superhero movies. He's kind of he has been in the past. So I mean, basically, we just need to get Scorsese to film a superhero movie, and you got kind of like the whole main cast of all the haters out there just getting back, in on the party. Ethan Hawke is a very good actor. So, and for someone to be vocally outspoken against the idea of how the superhero thing is kind of taken over Hollywood, but willing to be like, okay, I'll do it. It has to be something super interesting, right? Like that's what interests me on this. Is like he's not just selling out. He's selling out for something important.
Hopefully, yes. Something in the script speaks to him, and it's worth his time, or he just needs a paycheck. Who knows?
Yeah, that's a good point. You never know. But unfortunately, no one knows any of Moon Knight's villains, so we can't speculate on who it might be. Just one of the it's kind of nice actually when you get like to these kind of these C-tier heroes. The stories that they tell are pulling from comics, but they're like new to me, Right. So that's like I'm okay with that. Cuz I've seen the Batman Joker thing a lot, but like a Calendar Man movie, give me that. Hook it up to put it right here, right in the veins. Okay. Loki season 2 is reportedly already in development. We haven't even had season 1 yet. That trailer is super interesting. We thought it was probably the most interesting part of that entire thing.
It was very surprising, that trailer.
So they obviously feel very strongly about it, and they're bringing a season 2 forward. I think the best part of this is that we get I can't remember who's the actor who plays Tom Hiddleston. We just get him to continue playing Loki. Is like perfect. That's great. It's like Mark Hamill's Joker. Like the longer we can keep that running, the better. There might be some hits and misses in there, a couple misses, but overall, I think it'll be like just one of those iconic film roles. I think goes down as like one of the great villains in movie history, probably.
And Loki's the kind of character that he could play forever. Like Loki doesn't have to be defined by looking at any certain way, really.
He can do anything. Yeah.
So that being said, any actor could pick up the role of Loki and still fill the role. Because
sure,
Loki could be anybody.
Yeah, but you could say that about the Joker stuff too. But it's like so. On to the one Star Wars bit. Then there's only one Star Wars bit, so you can't even be that upset. Okay,
I'm not upset.
Alan Tudyk, love Alan Tudyk, great actor, great character actor. Reveals that he will not be appearing as K2SO in the Andor series. I know you guys are all disappointed to hear that. I know you'll be all disappointed to hear that. And the reason this is a story, because you're like, this is dumb. Why are we talking about this? The reason I'm bringing this up is because he was brought on stage when the Andor series was announced, up there with Diego Luna, as being like, "Hey, we're gonna show these characters before the events of Rogue One when they die."
Sure.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
So it reveals to me that unless the stories drastically change, and by the way, there's a line on here where he says that there's plans for the character apparently. So that maybe Andor won't be just a one season show anymore. That maybe they're stretching it out to maybe 2 seasons so they can bring in like a K2SO and others draw it more closely into Rogue One or something. That's the only my speculation on that, because he was a fan favorite character. It would be weird to that would be the place to bring him back, and if you don't bring him back there, like what was even the point?
Yeah.
So I know you guys are excited because it's Andor news, which is like, the worst of all of them.
It means we get another season of that show.
You haven't even seen the show yet. It's not even done, mate. You're just writing it off. It's not even fair. Give it a chance, Dan. Give it a chance. It might suck, but give it a chance.
Have you seen some of the featurettes on it?
I have. It looked like they're taking the
it looks
sets
like
very seriously.
Yeah, it looks like they're putting a lot of effort into this one. So
yeah. I mean, I think any of the stuff that's kind of set within the kind of original trilogy era, they take a lot of care into the look and feel of it, at least. So it'll at least look good. And I know maybe people didn't care about Diego Luna's character Andor in Rogue One. But I like to think of it more as like this is the rebellion spy show, and less about like this is about Diego Luna's like everyday life, Okay, so Warner Brothers news. Jeremy, get your lozenges out or whatever, because I'm going to be turning to you a bit here.
Lozenges.
I only say that because my throat is getting dry, and I'm so jealous of the idea of you having lozenges. If you have any, please.
I don't.
Okay. So Zack Snyder reveals that his Justice League will be a 4-hour movie after all. And not a 4-part miniseries. So just adding to the confusion, I'm sure you're going to tell me that this was announced a long time ago, but this is something that seemed to be a revelation.
I think it's relatively recent. I think, somebody asked a question in one of the comment sections on the Vero, and he said, it's going to be just a movie, I guess.
So that goes against what they said before, right? Which they said it was going to be split into 4 parts.
Yeah. Well, they were like, initially it was like they were playing with the idea of kind of doing both, and then I guess over the last 3-4 weeks they shifted that to confirm that it's a 4-hour movie.
And so hearing this, Jeremy, what do you make of that?
To be honest, I'm actually kind of disappointed with it. I just think the delivery method that way and the hype machine, I just think it's more exciting that way. But either way, to finally get this thing and to be, full on his vision, and then some, and, no restrictions whatsoever, and it's just this 4-hour epic, I'm still very much down for that.
Sure. I part of me is like, I like the idea of splitting into 4 1-hour or whatever 1-hour parts, because it created a new artistic constraint or challenge that Zack Snyder had to, it's like he can't just, stop a movie at 1-hour mark and then start up again, right? He had to think about how that would fit, and maybe he tried that and it didn't work. But I like the idea of creating that constraint, because I think it's been proven with almost any director. If you give them complete freedom to do anything, the movie can be as long as you want, put anything you want in there. It often doesn't turn out in the way that, that people always like. It's often people prefer the more constrained versions of, even Spielberg with Ready Player One is a great example. It's like, let's just, when you put the T-Rex in the dark, maybe that looked a little bit better than, a T-Rex stomping on a, hover car or whatever. So it's a long way of saying, are you worried that this like creates this problem? Like this just becomes too long of a movie to even like have an honest discussion about, kind of compared to other films?
No, not really. I just think he's kind of known, like his visions are like his best work are usually his director's cut, the more lengthy takes. And I think with all the players and pieces involved, I think 4 hours is actually pretty good when you really think about what's being what's being introduced here, and the different levels of every storyline and thread. Uh, so I don't know. I'm
Sure.
just, no matter what, I'm still super excited. It's just I was into the 4 hour
Hmm.
mini series type feel to it, and then the possibility of that being like extended for the sequel and then filmed in that way
Right.
was very appealing to me, to have this this high level thing kind of exist
Hmm.
in that way.
Dan, what do you make of this?
Well, I think it's probably for the best. The thing is, it is a movie at the end of the day. It's designed to be a movie, not to be broken up into 4 parts, right? That would have been them going out of their way to apply new work to it
Right.
for good reasons, and I think that would have been a really interesting way to experience this. But ultimately, this is designed to be a movie, so if it's a continuous viewing, I think that makes more sense to me. Now, 4 hours is a long time.
It's a really long, like, that's what I mean. Like, is this like the one exception to, movie, like, this movie's too long? This is a criticism we have of a lot of movies, right? And often it's full of a bunch of stuff that maybe didn't necessarily need to be in there. This is like, hey, yeah, maybe he could have made a 5 hour version, but if his like cut down version is still 4 hours, that seems like that's a long time, you know?
But that's what it is.
Yeah,
I guess.
I'm just super excited to, like, we know, like, we've basically seen the I don't know, the bones of this movie,
Right.
like, or something like
We have
that.
an idea of the structure,
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah.
kind of, but even then that could be totally different. But all we know is that we had some of these characters set up, in the movie before, and obviously, one in particular is Superman, the first one, and this one is just introducing so many more. Like, a lot of Aquaman stuff is in here, this because this was made before his solo film. So
Right.
Mera, Volko, they're all in it. You have all the Wonder Woman stuff. You have Flash being introduced. Cyborg, a major player in terms of the story and the mother
Right.
boxes and whatnot. It's just, I'm just so excited to see the way it was intended to be and how Batman is bringing this team together. And yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
I don't know if that's even fair. Like, was he intending to release a 4 hour movie in theaters? Like, there's no way that was going to be his original vision, right? Like, this is
No,
still
it was.
different than that.
He has 5.5, I think 5.5 hours of is like, yeah, is all
So
of his footage.
this is back to when he was like, oh well, I wanted to make 2 movies, and then he just made 2 movies, and he just shot it all in one movie, and he basically just like lied to the Warner Brothers about his plan.
I don't know if that happened.
Well, I mean,
I
like,
don't
you
know where you're
remember he
getting that
said, like,
information.
well, we talked about this, where he was basically like, he was originally planning it for 2 movies, and the
Yeah,
studio said,
but that's this. No, the studio was. That was the
so
common place, right? Harry Potter was, or no, was it Harry Potter, or it was
Harry
running?
Potter had 2 movies at the
Yeah, Harry
end.
Harry
Yeah,
Potter,
Potter,
Hunger
Twilight.
Games. It
Yeah.
was like
yeah.
the common thing, but it was beginning to show that, like, studios were just getting greedy. They were trying to expand, as much as they could from the
Well,
IP.
I don't know if it's fair to say it's not like, hey, Zach, you want to make a 6 hour movie? Why don't we just make 2 movies? Like, I don't know if that's like that's that bold of a thing to say. You know?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I just think that that was the case, right? They went along with that, and then they decided to change all that up, right? They wanted to completely scrap everything, essentially, and they did, and they
Yeah, I don't
reshot
know.
80% of the movie. So I don't know. I don't know what you're
Well, I don't
getting
know.
at.
It's like this seems like it seems like a whole new beast. A 4 hour film is a whole new thing to me. Like, it's like you're getting outside of the movie category into like something else. Like at 4 hours, but I don't know. Okay, so DC Films president Walter Hamada signed an extension to his contract. He'll be the head of the branch of Warner Brothers, not a studio necessarily, until at least 2023. This comes around the same time that it was announced that Ray Fisher is no longer going to be part of the Flash film, and that he doesn't want to work with Walter Hamada. So, Jeremy, can you give us the kind of the Cliff's Notes version of this? What's the takeaway here?
Yeah, it just seems to be obviously a major disagreement with the studio, Walter Hamada and Ray Fisher, but the studio they've already planned so much and give so much to Walter. He's basically like the Kathleen Kennedy or the
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Feige of all that Warner Brothers stuff, and particularly the DC stuff. So they've already set all their plans in motion. So it shows that they're sticking with him, sticking by his side, regardless of how whatever the investigation concluded or what it hasn't. And Ray Fisher's stance is still of that Walter Hamada enabled the whatever happened on after the filming and like tried to cover some of that up. So I guess that's kind of where they're all at right now.
Well, that seems like a big mess.
Yeah.
The whole thing is, it's unfortunate because it just casts a shadow over what they're trying to do creatively, right? It sounds like a little bit like a lame duck coach situation. Sometimes in sports, you have a coach on his last year of his contract. Regardless of whether or not you plan to fire him next year or not, you might extend him a year or two just for the optics of it. I'm not necessarily saying that's what's happening here, but that is a kind of thing that people think about is like, hey, if you got a head of a studio with only less than a year left on his contract, how can you plan long term if you don't have certainty at the kind of the head level? So I think that's probably more what it was about. Even if they're planning a change, they can keep Walter there as a transitionary, at least through a period. Again, not assuming that he's leaving or anything, but that's something that's sometimes done. In that,
yeah, all we know is that he's really heading this initiative of the multiverse, right? And it still looks like Marvel's going to beat DC to the punch, but Walter came out on that DC fandom and spoke with Greg Berlanti and all that stuff, and it really just tried to lay out like what the continuity of the DC universe means and the possibilities of that. So we still need to see that Flashpoint movie and all that stuff that's kind of under his control. I guess
the Flash movie is just an internal Hollywood jail. Like it's just like can't get off the ground. There's like now script problems. Now you can't get stars on board.
Well, I think they're definitely like starting to film pretty soon. I think it's definitely like it's in the process.
So they're planning on shooting, but there's news now that Cyborg's not going to be in it. So that implies
so then there was rumors that there was like multiple scripts that would have Cyborg or not, or this character or that character. So it's that's kind of a weird thing to plan out. But but then Ray Fisher confirmed that he was in I guess a particular version, and then since his stance, they just said okay, if that's how you feel,
right, just go our separate ways and
right.
End the kind of the drama for now until we get a book or something at some point.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily over. I think there's still some stuff to come out. I think, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a unfortunate thing.
Yeah, it's just like, man, that sucks. Like the whole thing, everything about it. So Warner Brothers have appointed a new executive, Tom Ashim. I think I'm saying that correctly. Ashheim, I don't know, to oversee and expand the Harry Potter franchise. I mentioned this to Dan earlier. And there's a live-action Harry Potter series in the works, HBO Max. We have no details on it. But I turn to you guys having more experience with Harry Potter. What could that be?
How do you know that?
That would... Well, I just know that. I just know. We've talked about this enough. I know. What could that be? What does a live-action HBO series to you mean? What would excite you? Are there stories that excite you, or are you kind of over Harry Potter?
Well, sure. I mean, if it's called Harry Potter, you'd have to assume that the titular character, is involved, and it's not just set in the world, right?
Well, I guess. I mean, you could call it the Wizarding World of something, but like at some point, that's the brand name,
Well, to a degree, but I mean, the Fantastic Beasts movies are not called Harry Potter movies,
right? But
they're in the same world, but they're deliberately not called Harry Potter movies. Regardless, what I would think though is, if it's a sequel to the movies, then the simplest answer is obviously Harry and Ron as Aurors working, and then whatever the new threat is, there haven't been books written about that, so they get to make up a story there,
right?
But I mean, the world is itself is rich enough that you could tell side stories and eventually build it up. But I think what it sounds like is they want to build a Harry Potter cinematic universe and eventually get to those other schools.
You could argue that they already have with the Fantastic.
Maybe that's
movies.
that's the intent there as well,
right.
But I don't think it has the same kind of traction that an MCU does.
No, and I think part of the reason those Fantastic,
DC?
well, apparently they're not good movies, so that's part of it. But also that they're pretty weird and they're not that good, and they lack the the core audience that was the Harry Potter fans aren't going out to see those movies, and there's a why is that? Again, it could be just that they're bad, but or that like that we need those main characters for people to be engaged. I like the idea of for using television as a format, right? And you can play around with that. I like the idea of a high school show set in Hogwarts.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to see a legacy show where they do like their
doesn't have to be
kids
doesn't
in
have to be their
Hogwarts,
kids. It could be set at any time period. It could be set like in the 20s or the whenever. I don't even know when Fantastic Beasts is set. I think it's around the 20s.
I suppose you could do that, but that's essentially what Harry Potter is. It's a story about them growing up and going to school. Like
right? You could argue that it could have been better told as a series, maybe.
Sure, absolutely, it could have. But
right. So it's an opportunity. Some people are saying, well, maybe they're thinking of remaking all the books as a series.
That's.
It seems like too soon, doesn't it? Even though it's like for Hollywood, maybe not.
I don't think it's too soon, but that's a huge task. That's
right.
An audacious.
It's like,
goal.
hey, we're gonna. I mean, hey, everyone's looking for that. Like, where's their Game of Thrones? Where's your Mandalorian? You need something for your streaming service? Like a weekly Harry Potter show.
It's got legs, yeah.
Come on,
that's not a bad idea,
right? I'd watch it.
I'd probably watch it too.
Yeah. Jeremy, what would get you to subscribe to HBO Max if it was for a Harry Potter anyway? Besides, obviously, Justice League.
Okay, wait, what? What's your question?
We're talking about what Harry Potter idea. What could they do with television that would excite you?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a fan of the world, the look, the magic, all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it'd be. Yeah, I think that the high school idea is kind of where I'd go at with it.
You could do it could be fun to do with like James and Lily's high school experience. You could have like young Severus, Harry's parents.
That would be pretty cool.
Right?
That would be really cool.
You get Tom Riddle in there.
That would be super cool. It would kind of be like Riverdale, I feel like, in that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like
So
kind of
just
it would still
Harry
more
Potter's
serious,
parents,
right?
Basically.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool.
Could be. I don't know. And it sounds like that's sort of like the Riverdale is probably the tone they're going to want to go for with Harry Potter too. So maybe.
Marcos mentions, please don't make it about the cursed child. I don't know about the cursed child. What's the thinking there?
That's like a book she wrote like way after, I think, but it's like somewhat of a sequel or something. I don't know.
No, isn't it a stage play? I think it's a stage play that she wrote.
Yeah, that sounds right. And then she releases a book
later,
for some reason.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not very good. There's been J.K. Rowling has a lot of drama around her just generally right now, but the kind of sentiment I've been hearing is that a lot of her later work isn't as strong as her earlier work, and that they would hope that if they're doing this kind of stuff that they could kind of make it a little bit more independently from her. But it is her franchise, so it's like
you would want her to be involved with the show. She created the world. She needs to be a consultant on the show.
Well, consultant, sure, but maybe not at the story level. Maybe more at the kind of the world level. Okay. This is mostly rumor, but it's probably true. Due in part to the handling of the Tenet release. What was that?
That was a piece of this pen.
Okay. Due in part to the way that Warner Brothers handled the Tenet release, Chris Nolan is unlikely to return to Warner Brothers for his next picture. He apparently is disappointed by the studio's hybrid release strategy. This comes back to what we were talking about earlier. He takes the film-going experience very seriously. Doesn't feel happy about the way Tenet was released. I don't know if there was a right answer for what Warner Brothers was doing there. I think ultimately, if he really wanted to maintain integrity of the film, he would have just held on to it until theaters reopened.
That's the only alternative.
Right? So instead, he wanted the movie out, or the studio wanted the movie out. Either way, he's not happy with how things went. This would be one of the biggest, director studio breakups in, a really long time. When kind of Spielberg originally kind of took off from Warner Brothers for a little while. So, it's pretty big news. I think that would be the big get, who's the next like studio to land the Nolan movie. That'd be pretty exciting. I mean, especially if you can get it on your streaming service. Jeremy, what do you think of this? Again, mostly rumor at this point, but still.
Yeah, I guess if he's unhappy, he's gonna have to do what he wants to do. I guess. I mean, he's made a bunch of movies with them, but I don't know. He's gonna make movies. They're gonna go to another streaming service. Like, I don't see. Yeah, I don't know.
You say you don't see he can escape the streaming service thing. Like that's what he's running away
Yeah,
from.
I think
but
that's
there's
really.
no escaping
I
it.
think that's really at the bottom of all this. But and like, and just yeah, he wasn't made aware of it, and that's gonna suck. I feel like
Right.
when you've built a relationship with the company and they just decide, without any input, what they're gonna
Right.
do with
To change their strategy.
with your art.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I understand that at that core level, but at the same time, it's like the global pandemic. Like, what's the right decision to make? I don't know. Maybe Chris Nolan was saying, "Hold it, hold it, hold it." We don't know, but there does seem to be a little bit of like hindsight being 2020 there, Chris. Like, yeah, your movie didn't make a bunch of money like you expected it to, but it also released it in the worst possible time. So, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is there. Ultimately, for an average, everyday movie-going citizen, I don't think it really matters where Chris Nolan makes his movie.
He's the type of director that he can kind of write his own checks. Like he
his
can
name,
go wherever he wants.
His name brings the butts in the seats.
Like I'm not saying Warner Brothers can't do that. Like they obviously had a good working relationship, but he's going to be fine. He'll find work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I mean, sorry, I got distracted. Marco says a show about the Marauders. I assume talking about Harry Potter still is the answer. What are the Marauders? Do you know what the Marauders are?
It's been a while. I don't remember the Marauders. Jeremy?
I don't know either.
Okay. All right, Marcus, let us know. We'll come back. We'll come back to that. Okay.
Well, I think yeah, anyways.
Joe Kinnaman says that the Suicide Squad movie that he's in, the Suicide Squad movie, will be the biggest budget R-rated movie that's ever been made. That says E-rated on here, but it's not rated E for everyone. It's rated R. The biggest budget R-rated movie ever made. That's a pretty ballsy. It's a pretty bold statement, I guess. But I mean, inflation, what it is.
I suppose. I mean, R-rated movies typically aren't large budget, right? Like they're typically a lower budget because, I guess they're dealing with different type of subject material, and they don't need to rely so much on CG and stuff like that. Again, historically,
right?
So, but this one obviously will. Like all he's saying is this movie is going to be hyper violent, hyper sexualized.
Yeah, man. I can't wait. This movie's gonna be sweet. Like this is this is the R-rated version of Guardians of the Galaxy, basically, that we're getting. It in a way, right? It's an unhinged version of James Gunn just letting loose. I think that's kind of fun, regardless of how it makes sense about how it fits into the other Suicide Squad movie or not. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Don't ask those questions. Okay, so Marco's give us an answer here. So it's about Harry's dad and his boys, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, James Potter, Peter Pettigrew. I don't know.
This I forgot the name. I guess it's Padfoot, Prongs.
What?
They're all nicknames because they all have like an animal version of themselves.
Right,
but
right.
That was Harry's dad and his crew is what he's saying.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah, I'd be into that too. Actually, like I said, just set it in the world and we'll be fine with it. Basically,
Worm Tongue, Padfoot, Prongs, Worm Tongue, and the other one.
Okay, got it. Okay, Jeremy, any thoughts on the Suicide Squad being this massive R-rated movie? That we kind of already knew that, but
yeah, I definitely already knew this, so nothing's changed for me.
Nothing new there. You're like, yep, no. I'm into it. Here's something that's a little bit more depressing. Warner Brothers is looking at Tom Holland or Timothée Chalamet to play a young Willy Wonka in their prequel movie called Wonka, which seems like the least inspired choices of all time, right? Who's hot? Who's the young hot actor right now? Get me them. Get me the Chalamet.
He's in everything.
The Chalamet.
Give me the what's that French guy is and everything now? Give me the Chalamet. Give me that guy. I first of all don't want a Willy Wonka prequel movie. Don't need it. And like I know we said like what do you don't need? What do you mean? Do you need a movie? This is a perfect example of a movie you don't need.
Yeah, I agree.
Why?
Well, what if you ever wondered about Willy Wonka's origin? Like, who cares?
I think Willy Wonka as a character
is a weird guy.
Shouldn't have an origin. Like he's kind of like the Joker. The mystique around the character. Right. He's sort of like a cosmic force. He doesn't need an origin story.
The Joker had an origin story, and we all
the Joker's had millions of origin stories, but they're not official, right? Like the Joker's as a character, he's more mythological.
Here's the stupid thing, though. What's gonna happen is it's gonna be about a young Willy Wonka interacting with a different kind of version of Willy Wonka, like something that has to fit that like mentor role is going to be there. So it's going to be like the predecessor to Willy Wonka, it was like there was another guy that was just like him.
I
That's
don't
what
think so.
exactly what it
I
would
don't
be
think
like.
so.
Absolutely.
No, I think you go a different route. You make a movie about him creating
Self-made.
the factory and like choosing to create chocolate and stuff a different way and choosing
Maybe.
to emphasize kids having fun as opposed to profits and all that kind of stuff. Like you can have him discovering that side of himself and creating
Maybe.
the factory.
Or maybe there's like so maybe they do like an inverted version of Willy Wonka. It's like he was his boss and he taught him all the wrong lessons.
Maybe.
He learned not to do or whatever. I don't know. Either way, I don't want to. Even though we just talked about possibilities, I don't want to see it.
Whatever.
It's not a movie I care about. I don't care. Okay. So the biggest thing that happened in DC since our last main show was that Wonder Woman 1984 came out. So I just wanted to take a quick second, give our quick thoughts on it. It's been a while. It's been basically about a month to a day. It's been a month to the day since that movie came out. So we talked a little bit about it, a little bit more in depth in our last Call of Duty stream, and I'm not expecting anyone to go back and listen to that.
No.
But if you want to, it is there. It is there. So, and I couldn't even tell you where in the stream. It's like somewhere in the
not
first
worth your
quarter
time
of
to
it. Right.
I beg you not to go.
no one's
Right. Anyway, which is why we're going to talk about it here
Yeah,
again,
okay.
because that's not a realistic expectation.
Right.
So, there was a lot of drama around this movie. I think let's talk about just our overall thoughts of what we liked, what we didn't like about the movie. Just overall, take it for what it is, and then we can talk about kind of what it could have been or where it went wrong afterwards. Does that work?
Just to be clear though, like that'll have to include spoilers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So let's
be prepared for that.
Yeah, well,
listeners.
and there's a couple more things in terms of news that we have to talk about, but not a lot. So you can feel free to skip forward ahead. There should be some TV news as well. So, Wonder Woman 1984. It is a movie that I was very, very, very excited about. I think it has one of the best trailers. We talk about this all the time. One of the best trailers ever made. It's so good.
Lots of hype going into this one.
So much. And like Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman was great. We all liked it. We was like, third act might have had some problems, but overall, good, fun movie, right? And then we come into this, and it's kind of a big mess. It's too long. It's tonally all over the place.
Very tonally different from the first one.
Yeah, a wide tonal shift from the first movie for sure. It looks different. Like there's a lot of weird stuff. I liked a lot of stuff in this movie, for the record. I enjoyed a lot of elements of it, but it as a whole, taken as one quote unquote cohesive piece, it doesn't, I don't think, work, which is unfortunate. Especially the kind of the back half of the movie is just so drastically different than seemingly the rest of the movie. It's weird. But anyway, what did you think of Wonder Woman? You haven't really talked about it in a public setting yet.
Yeah, I've been trying to avoid it. Honestly, I'm sorry. Not to be too negative. There are things I liked about it. The performances are great. Like the actors involved are good, of course. They're not the problem. I think the script is a problem. The way it's shot is the pacing, the CG, everything else about it is a problem. Like this movie is not good, guys.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
No, I think we're all in 100% agreement here. I mean,
I wasn't as down on the CG as you guys were.
Man.
It did not bug me as much.
This movie's like surprisingly bad.
Yeah.
Man, some of the choices they make about like it's like baffling. You're like, hey, you guys, of all the things you could do, you chose to do that. Interesting.
I gotta send you a video. Someone like kind of highlighted some of those baffling moments, and like the guy like plays like Patty Jenkins like quotes over top of it.
Oh no!
And she's talking about like the pre-renders when people are seeing it and how they don't think it looks good and all this stuff. And then like it's just funny seeing the finished product, especially with all the delays and all the time and how we thought it would just be. We thought it would just be so polished. But yeah, like I no complaint with the actors, the characters, right? Like they're all fantastic.
Yeah, Pedro Pascal is having a great time.
Yeah. Everyone's super good. It just the payoffs are just they're just not there, especially with Cheetah. Terrible payoff in my opinion. Also looked bad, which I thought they were going to surprise us,
right?
With the look, but was very disappointed with that. And just the setup of having this like fun 80s action movie just wasn't enough action. The action that was there was I don't know. It just didn't feel good. It didn't look right.
Right.
And then everyone's trying to say that they're going for this Richard Donner Superman, type feel. But yeah, it just I don't think it translated quite fully there.
I don't think that's what they were going. If that's what they were going for, it wasn't successful. Like,
I can see where they were trying to, especially with the flight scene, like that kind of that very bright, hopeful kind of tone.
Yeah,
but
they were pretty vocal that they're trying to kind of capture some of that.
And again, I'm not even opposed to that tone being used
Sure.
with Wonder Woman. Like I think that fits. I think like that. It's not it's not the tone that gets me. It's this like these character decisions that seem to like regress the character constantly, and it makes no sense. The movie makes no sense most of the time. I think that's a big problem. And like even if you just like, it's like, without getting into spoilers, like the core conceit, if you buy the core conceit, you can be like, okay, whatever, then like anything can happen. But the decision to bring, it was in the trailer, the decision to bring Chris Pine back is, like if you're gonna do that, like tell an interesting story. There's no interesting story told with that. Like why would you?
And it just serves as like an annoyance for Wonder Woman. It doesn't really help her character.
He teaches her all the wrong lessons until she's learning all the wrong lessons until he has to like explicitly say to her, "No, you're being stupid." Like
I think, unfortunately, most of the characters in that movie, up to and including Wonder Woman, are pretty superficial characters. There's not a lot of character, like there's not a lot of depth. There's not a lot of growth out of these characters within the movie itself. As much as the actors are doing their best, they're not. I feel like they weren't given enough of a script. Like Pedro Pascal and his relationship with the child is a side note at best. Like
right.
That you're supposed to have. That's supposed to have emotional resonance, and it absolutely doesn't. There's no. I don't buy it whatsoever. Right?
Well, I mean,
but it's not Pedro Pascal's fault.
It's just given like the shorter
They
shrift.
have like 3 scenes, and they're all superficial scenes. And then even Wonder Woman.
He
and Chris
hears
Pine.
him talking about him outside the office, and you just see his head get up and walk away. What a crazy idea! Like this, like I don't know. Well, okay. So
extremely disappointing.
Let's just be extremely disappointed. Is there anything you liked about Wonder Woman 1984 before we get into spoilers here?
I liked when the credits started.
No, I liked I think it can't be understated enough. But like the chemistry with the actors, I feel like was the only thing saving this thing for me. I mean, I just enjoyed seeing them, in these roles again for some, new for some. But yeah, it's just the script was just a huge letdown, especially coming out that first movie, and how everyone was kind of, unanimously, this is, a fresh, movie or whatever. So
I think the first half of this movie, maybe a quarter of this movie, is really entertaining. Like the the like flashback to her as a kid, and the race sequence, I think is exciting. And fun. I think the scene in the mall when she's taking out those robbers.
The mall scene is really cool. Yes.
Right. Like that kind of stuff is cool.
I'm not a fan of that mall scene.
Well, and I think I know why. But to me, the mall scene was overly cheesy, like deliberately so.
Right.
And I thought that was like a mislead. I thought it was like trying to set up a false tone for the movie and like, kind of trick the audience because it's the opening of the movie and you get comfortable. Like I think you said it in one of our other podcasts or maybe on a stream, Jeremy. Like that mall scene was like Commando, right?
I think I brought up Commando.
I think Julian did. Well, we're referencing mall scenes and how fun and exciting they can be. I mean, what was memorable about this mall scene? You know what I mean? Like, tell me, like what?
I guess her flipping her tiara around.
For me, it wasn't about the scene. It's more about the tone that it started the movie off with. Because in my mind, I was like, okay, sweet, we're gonna start here, and then it's gonna get dark, and then something's gonna happen, and it's gonna get real. Right. And I don't feel like that other shoe ever dropped in the movie.
I also was like, even if they wanted to go with like a cheesy 80s vibe, I was like into that. Like, okay, this movie's set in the 80s, let's do a cheesy 80s thing. But they didn't even use like 80s music. They don't use any like that sweet synth that they used in the trailer's gone. It's absent from this entire film. Like that is another crazy, like the lack of good music in this movie is baffling to me. There's so much good 80s music you could pull from. And it's not like the rights are that expensive, so whatever. So
we get a beautiful lie somewhere in the movie there too at the end, which is from BVS.
Right.
Hans Zimmer's score for Batman.
Well, I mean, this is kind of like, speaking of like Hans Zimmer's scores, Wonder Woman's score from Batman vs Superman is like iconic at this point. You know, you know what I'm saying? Where's that? Like, where you guys know what I'm saying?
It was in there.
Like, but it wasn't memorable. Like, there's nothing. They didn't bring anything new to that like made it exciting or and refreshing. I don't know. I mean, the movie is overall disappointing. You mentioned the script. Let's get into spoilers here. Full warning for spoilers. Feel free to skip ahead. Let's talk about the script. There's a reason that we're all kind of, beating around the bush, I guess, a little bit here. Jeff Johns has his fingerprints all over this script. And there's a lot of there's been a lot of speculation ever since basically Green Lantern that he's not he's not good at this the script like screenwriting stuff, and people are like you're not giving him a chance, he hasn't had the right opportunities, stuff like that. But it seems like at this point we might be able to draw a conclusion, at least somewhat.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's just such a weird unfolding of events, like from his legendary run in the comics, especially on Green Lantern, writing it for I think 9 years, multiple major events, basically just being the writer of that generation.
He was leading the creative charge at DC at the time,
right? Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, and then just with Zack Snyder, doing Man of Steel, with on the heels of Christopher Nolan, the Dark Knight trilogy, and where they're going with that, Warner Brothers, and who they have. He kind of came in there, at a moment in time when the MCU was very successful, and he had his pitch to bring a similar tone, a similar vibe, similar energy to recreate, what Marvel's doing cinematically. Right. And that included Jeff Johns, typical kind of classic takes on these characters that include the hope and optimism and all that jazz. So he's been hard at work. He worked it with Shazam, I believe, and Aquaman, the latter half of Wonder Woman, all of Wonder Woman 2. And yeah, I think we're starting to see he might not have the chops here for full creative control over how these stories play out.
There is an interesting documentary to be made about
100%,
about the saga of the DC films and how they're influenced by what Marvel was doing and like the ifs and buts and what could have been. There's so many I feel like there's some pivotal moments along the way. Like if a decision had been made differently here, and here, things could have been very very different.
For sure.
And like they're not made in a vacuum, and it's so fascinating because it seems to mirror like the comic book history too. Like this has been going on the pages for forever, right? This like this back and forth about who's on top, Batman and Spider-Man and like all this different stuff, and borrowing obviously like Hawkeye and Green Arrow and all this kind of back and forth, borrowing and stealing in some cases, and the talent going back and forth. And it's like that happening on the film side, I think is like it's like we're no lessons learned here, which is unfortunate, I think. So overall thoughts, I guess, if you guys can now able to spoil Wonder Woman 84, what's the kind of the is there one thing that you can point to like this is why it doesn't work? You mentioned that the kind of never gets serious. For me, it's like they don't explore this like wishing idea in an interesting way. It's like you can do anything you want, and they chose to build a wall in the middle of the Middle East. It seems so tone deaf to me. Like I don't, like I understand you need to set up what country is Black Adam from? Kondak. I think that's what they're setting up there.
Right.
But like I think you could just like you don't have to write an explanation at all. There's just another country there. You just write
I'm fine with that. It's just like he didn't seem to be using the power in any sort of cool way ever. It was just like it was about manipulating people, but not even like really investing into that. Like it was just people giving him what he wanted the entire movie. There were no real stakes.
Wouldn't you wish for that? And he says like over that, it's like okay, you have another line. Give me something else here. I watched a movie called Wishmaster. It's from 1993 or whatever, but earlier in the year, like well before Wonder Woman 84, and it like became like oddly similar to what they were trying to do with Wonder Woman 1984. But that movie did it more in an interesting way because it actually took this idea of twisting someone's wish, right? That monkey's paw situation, but they don't follow through in Wonder Woman. Like in let me put it this way. In Wishmaster, at one point, a guy wishes, he says something along the lines like, you'd have to go through me or something, and I'd love to see that, or I wish I could see that. And he turns into a door, and then he like crashes through him. It's real and terrible CG, right? But it's like, that might be stupid, but at least it's inventive, you know? And this is like, this is the best question I think that capitalizes this. Cheetah, what was her wish?
To be like Wonder Woman.
And what did she give up?
She got turned into a fucking cheetah, and what did she give up?
Because everyone had to give up something, right?
Yeah, like what was the downside? I guess the idea is that she got like aggressive.
She got
like,
mean. She just became
like,
mean. That's so stupid. You know, like,
well, maybe what she had to give up is her humanity because she turned into an animal.
Oh,
right?
maybe.
Like, I think that's the way to look at it.
But like, and then Wonder Woman had to give up her powers, but also only kind of, I guess, like only enough for that the movie could still happen. And I don't know. Jeremy, help me out here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we're ever gonna really figure it out.
There's no way to figure it out. I mean, that's probably a good point too. Like, it's just like another unfortunate kind of mess of a DC movie.
I will say, we've mentioned the performances before. That was the saving grace, like you said, Jeremy. I think Kristen Wiig did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
in this role
sure.
as a dramatic actor. You know,
It
someone
was
that
the
we're not
payoff,
used to seeing
really.
in this type of role. So she was great. Again, she just wasn't given the right stuff to say. It's not her fault.
Yeah. Well, it's the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies all over again. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on from Wonder Woman. There's a couple things I want to touch on in Game of Thrones world. One of them being the fact that it's been 10 years since the last Game of Thrones book has been released.
2021, it's meant to come out Winds of Winter.
Oh, yeah?
That's what he said, like, this time for real.
Yeah. He's finally coming back with those smokes or whatever he went to the store with? Or
Well, I mean, it's been wishy-washy before, but this was this is pre-pandemic. He said 2021, and he said that since pandemic, he's
got nothing but time.
Well, no, he's got a lot of other projects. George Martin
Right.
has tons of other projects going on. But this is one of his major ones. So I'm really hoping that book does drop this year. The last book in the Expanse series is also meant to drop this year, so that'd be great.
The last book. Interesting. Okay. Lots of it. But this isn't even supposed to be the last book.
So this is
the second last.
Presumably the second last. There could even be an eighth, but who knows?
Oh, that's crazy. Okay. HBO is looking to develop a prequel series on Robert's Rebellion because Game of Thrones will always be around now. So at one point they talked about how they didn't want to make a Robert's Rebellion prequel because it was too close to the original series, and it was something that they kind of explored and not necessarily flashback, but through dialogue and stuff in the original series. Right? It was always talked about. There's obviously a lot of story there, but it felt like it was too close to what they were already doing or too in the timeline. So they're kind of backpedaling on that a little bit. They're looking to, no guarantees. They've been looking to develop a bunch of sequels, and they have they remember at one point they had like a bunch of competing pitches.
Well, no, I think we're seeing those trees bear fruit, right? Like,
well, one was already canceled,
right? But this is one of those pitches. At one point, there were 4 active and like 6 that were potential pitches.
Right, I remember. Yeah.
So we always kind of assumed, like people, not just us, that Robert's Rebellion would be. That's like the natural choice for one of those.
I guess
series. We had said that it would be the most boring. I don't know that any official HBO statement ever said that.
Maybe I'm confusing.
I remember
HBO
thinking
stands.
like, well, like the whole thing. The reason Game of Thrones, one of the reasons Game of Thrones is successful is the mystique around the past. You know, if we go and have a series where we explore definitively what happened, it kind of takes away some of that mystique.
Well,
that's what we were saying back then.
Well, that also, and you know we know the outcomes of the major characters.
Well, sure, yeah,
right?
It's the same thing with the Star Wars prequels,
right?
Same
exactly.
issue.
With any prequel, you kind of fall into unless you go far back enough, right? The Old Republic stuff in Star Wars is a good example. You go back 1,000 years, you can tell any story you want because who cares?
And
right?
that was the plan. The original spin-off series for Game of Thrones was meant to be a couple thousand years prior,
right? And that
the Long Night.
That was fascinating because then it could be anything, right? I think maybe this is one of those situations where, like we were talking about Harry Potter, like there's something about the main story that is what is the product. And if you try to venture too far away from it, maybe that the people aren't there. Yep. So this is like, hey, we'll just kind of give them what they want. It just seems like it's too easy.
Just
You know?
remember that this is one of the spin-off series. Another is Dunk and Egg. I think we were talking about the other day. The Tales of Dunk and Egg takes place about 100 years before the events of Game of Thrones, which is also before Robert's Rebellion. I think that's removed enough, but still familiar. That to me, that's the sweet spot. The Dunk and Egg stories, and you already have the subject material because George Martin has written all the novellas.
Right.
So you have something to go off of. I think that just makes the most logical sense for a prequel
and we
series.
don't even know if that's how far along, if it is in development at all. So I mean, there's a lot of the longer it takes for them to come up with a series and get it on a screen, the more difficult it's going to be to bring people back.
Right. So
you really need to get this out sooner than later. I mean, you kind of already lost the prime time, a couple years, and people don't talk about the final season at all, even though the journey was like huge, right?
Right.
So it's like you have a couple things you have to overcome. You have to fix some of the goodwill you burnt with season 7, and then pitch them, or season 8, sorry, and then pitch them on a new one. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Jeremy, any thoughts on Game of Thrones here?
No, and I don't know who Dunk and Egg is, but it sounds stupid.
You're right. It does sound stupid. I'll give you that. HBO. Speaking of, The Last of Us, their series will be directed by the indie darling Katamir Balagov, who directed Beanpole, which is a film that came out recently. Jeremy, I feel like you've been paying a little bit more close to this. Are you familiar with this? Is this good news?
No, I'm not actually.
No. Okay, so basically all I know is that this is a director that was like handpicked for this project, and people seem to be excited about it. So, we don't have Beanpole as reference. Like we've never seen it, so it doesn't have the most exciting name for a movie. But I think people are saying it's good. Apparently Beanpole is very successful at Cannes, I think. So I think the pedigree of the show seems to be they just add more talented people over and over again.
Yeah, all for it.
Okay. Very important story. Production has begun on Ted Lasso season 2, so this is very exciting. I know everyone's excited about that.
Great.
Yeah.
Check that off the list and move
everyone
on.
needs to know. Okay. Amazon's Lord of the Rings series has an official synopsis. Dan, would you like to read the official synopsis?
Amazon Studios' forthcoming series brings to screens for the very first time the heroic legends of the fabled Second Age of Middle-earth's history. This epic drama is set thousands of years before the events of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and will take viewers back to an era in which great powers were forged, kingdoms rose to glory and fell to ruin, unlikely heroes were tested, hopes hung by the finest of threads. I'm choosing to pluralize that, and the greatest villain that ever flowed from Tolkien's pen threatened to cover all the world in darkness.
Ooh.
Beginning in a time of relative peace, the series follows an ensemble
Keeps
cast
going
of
on. It
characters,
keeps
both
continuing.
familiar and new, as they confront the long-feared reemergence of evil to Middle-earth. That's...
What? What?
It's not really the reemergence. Well, it kind of is. Anyways.
Okay.
From the darkest depths of the Misty Mountains to the majestic forests of the elf capital of Lindon to the breathtaking island kingdom of Numenor, to the furthest reaches of the map, these kingdoms and characters will carve out legacies that live on long after they are gone. End quote.
Cool. So
awesome, fucking awesome.
Tell us why we should care.
Well, I mean, it's all in it already.
It's all there. What do you mean? What do you
Why
mean?
do we care about the Numenorians?
You certainly are gonna care about the Numenorians. The Numenorians.
You're gonna know the names of those Numenorians, Jeremy.
Well,
you're gonna be friends with them.
They're gonna be the main characters of the show. You will know their names. Aragorn is a descendant of Numenor.
So they live a long time.
What?
They can live a long time.
Yeah. So the Numenorians are granted additional long life, so they live longer than regular people. You can kind of think of Numenorians as almost like half elves. Their island was founded at the end.
Men.
They are considered men. They are the men of the West, the Dunedain.
Duh, Jeremy, come on, come on.
The
Dunedain. Numenor was founded by Elrond's brother. Elrond, you'll know as the father of Arwen Evisar from the movies. The big elf in Rivendell, right?
You will know that, yeah.
Arwen's dad.
Yes.
Okay. What's his famous line?
Sorry.
What's his famous line in those movies?
He's got a million of them. Oh, the Isildur. Isildur. Anyways, long story short, his brother is the founder of Numenor. They were granted they are half elves. So they're in their family. Their bloodline comes from a mixture of elves and men. So Elrond and his brother Elros were given the option to be either men or elves. Elrond chose
When
elves.
do you decide this?
It was at the end of the first age after they fought Melkor.
Was it like a big,
it's
like a big reset. Like, hey, you can be whatever you want now.
Not even close. But I'm not going to get into the whole why, because there's a whole Silmarillion on that.
Yeah,
anyways.
Which you should obviously be reading.
The Numenorians, it's like this shouldn't be considered a spoiler. This is the Lord of the Rings
History.
Atlantis myth.
Oh, okay.
That I really don't think that should be considered a spoiler. You should go into the show knowing that. I don't know how it's going to happen or when.
Hold on. Do you think people should go into the show knowing that? Do you think most people know that, and do you think that they're better off knowing that going to the show? I feel like better off not knowing it. Don't you think?
Well, you know that Numenor's not a part of the Lord of the Rings.
That's
you know
true. That's true.
You know that at that point it's gone off the map.
But you don't know why.
You don't know why, and I'm not telling you why.
Right. Okay. But you did give us a hint when you said the Atlantis myth.
It's a kingdom that disappears.
Right.
It's the same as Valyria in Game of Thrones. It's an ancient kingdom. The doom happened to Valyria.
Mm-hmm.
There are other examples. It's just like Atlantis is our world's example of a great civilization that met some untimely fate, and we don't really know what, and there's a lot of mythology around it.
Right.
That's all it is. Numenor is similar. There are Isildur and Elendil come to Middle-earth, and eventually Isildur, their line results in Aragorn. That's why the Numenorians are important. There's more to it than that. It's hard to talk about this without spoiling anything, really.
Do you think that's going to be the case for the entire series? That you're not going to be able to talk without spoiling it?
Certain parts, yeah, but that was also the case for Game of Thrones.
By the time
I mean,
100%.
Yes and no. I mean, like, there's some story structure stuff here that's just kind of like obvious, right? Like, it seems like it follows from what we've talked about in the past. It seems like it follows a fairly like traditional story arc for this type of like lost empire story. I think seems like it to me. So I think like you can kind of infer some things, but I mean, I'm not. I know some of the fate already based on conversations with Dan. Ultimately, it's gonna be about the characters, I think. So
yes,
who cares really? I guess as Dan's going to be saying, like, go into it knowing it's gone because who cares?
Well, kind of, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna happen. Get used to it. Just enjoy the ride.
It's the same as going into any sort of going into Star Wars prequels. You know, Ahsoka can't survive into the current timeline.
Yeah, you'd think.
I don't know.
You'd
well,
think.
Okay, maybe that's a bad example, but you know. Well, you knew Anakin had to turn into Darth Vader the entire time throughout the prequel series. You knew.
Oh boy, I wish it.
But you want to watch it happen.
Sure, wish it happened differently, but yeah,
it's the same thing. You're gonna know about
right.
it in general. You have a general feeling, but it's the journey. You know, you're still gonna enjoy it.
I think a part of it is what it becomes is the prequel, telling these prequel stories. Same thing with Harry Potter if they choose to do it that way. Is that like, because you know the stakes, you create these expectations in your head. Well, there is no stakes.
There's a distinction, though.
There is technically stakes, but it's like, but you create expectations. You already have an idea of what these are supposed to be. It's the same problem that people have when they adapt a book or whatever. Is that there's preconceived conceptions of what it's supposed to be, so it never lives up to what you're expecting it to be, no matter how good it is. And then sometimes you get people who are not familiar with the properties at all. They come in, they see the prequels for the first time, and they think it's great, right? Because they don't have anything to base that, like they don't have anything to judge it off of, you know.
So with it being a Lord of the Rings show, like I'm sure the expectations will be high, and there will be expectations that aren't met for the show. I think the distinction though between those two things is that there is subject material for this. There are entire like volumes about this.
Right.
They have a lot. There are actual stories. They're not making up characters and making up a story. They are adapting.
So
an existing story.
how in depth is this story? Is there like dialogue and stuff that they can pull from, or like
100%?
And like every detail's been fleshed out, or they have creative room to flesh out?
I mean,
details
there's always room, but the story itself, by and large, is told within the books.
Okay, I see.
Not to the same degree of detail as Lord of the Rings,
right?
But it's still the story. All of its bones are there.
Like, is it like a generational tale? Like, does it like skip large parts of time, or is it a story that feels naturally kind of converted into like a series like this?
Yeah, absolutely. It can easily be adapted.
Okay, and like 1-to-1, like you could
maybe not exactly 1-to-1, but close enough.
Okay, all right. I wonder if that's I'm so curious about the I think what I'm curious about most with this show is the design choices they make when it comes to actually.
Beautiful, yeah.
Well, no, but like, are they going to ape the movie look, which is like very iconic at this point?
Well, okay,
right?
so here's if I'm designing the show, this is how you would want to think about it, right? If you think about Minas Tirith in Gondor and the way the Citadel guards helmets look, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
That is Numenorian inspired. Like that area.
Yeah, but how much different is that from the helmets that they were wearing?
Night and day different from like the Rohirrim or anybody else in that world. Like when they get to Gondor, you feel like you're in a completely different place,
right?
And that's because it has those Numenorian influences. I think you lean into that stuff. The Numenorians, they had their boats were all they looked like wings. They looked like swan wings. Their helmets also often had wing imagery. So like you lean into that kind of stuff. I don't know. It has its own kind of unique look. It's not going to look like anywhere else in Middle Earth.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to say about this series, Daniel or Jeremy?
Jeremy?
No.
No. Okay. Dan, anything else you want to like off? Anything that jumps out of this? I guess this synopsis.
This is more or less what we were assuming it was going to be. I mean, like, for it to say from the darkest depths of the misty mountains to the majestic forests of the elf capital Lindon. I mean, I like that they're calling Lindon out, I guess. But that's not surprising. That's just naming places in Middle Earth.
Well, it seems like it's going to be a more broad tale. Like it's going to be kind of globe-trotting in its storytelling, maybe a little bit.
Well, yeah, because that's the part that's interesting. Is that's the part they're going to have to expand upon. Because largely the story that they're adapting takes place on and around Numenor, and then partially in what becomes Gondor. But there's other stories of what the elves are up to that are kind of like slightly related, but not quite.
Right.
They're going to tie that all together a bit more cohesively, I'd assume.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, they're obviously, full steam ahead with the show. It's gonna be. I feel like
here's the challenges. Sorry to interrupt. I just realized this though. Challenges: no hobbits. I'm sure they can bring hobbits in, but they
right. But no one will give a shit about who they are.
So they probably no hobbits, no wizards, no Gandalf at this point.
That sucks.
That's tough.
I bet you they bring in a wizard. I bet you there's a wizard in there.
No. No Nazgul.
Yeah, but there's other scary stuff that they could do.
Sure. It's at a weird time though. This is at, like it says here, it's at a piece. It's at the end of the First Age, so the First Age ends essentially when Melkor is changed.
Sounds like there's maybe some sort of Phantom Menace.
Kind of. almost, yeah. There's a big bad guy who's in chains, and then there's another little bad guy that shows up. But it's weird because you don't have. I guess you kind of have the same thing with Lord of the Rings, that the creeping evil, the evil is starting to reawaken in the world.
Right.
It actually, it kind of lines up nicely because they're both at the end of an age, which is at a time of relative peace, and then
it's the end of the High Republic era, basically at the close to around when Episode 1 starts. Yeah. And the Star Wars stuff kind of presents it as like the bureaucracy is the evil. I think it's probably a little bit more like on the nose, probably in like it's evil, like actual like skeletons and zombies and monsters kind of evil.
No. Well,
goblins, I guess, and
yes,
and
orcs and goblins and trolls will definitely be evil.
I guess I went the wrong way with the fantasy. I wanted to go that way with fantasy. I started saying the wrong ones. Werewolves. Ooh.
But what's going to be interesting about this show, and I think what's going to be successful about this show, is going to be the political angle, because this is a show about men in a world of fantasy creatures,
right.
Of elves and dwarves and goblins and orcs.
Have you seen that cop show about goblins and orcs and
right? No, I haven't.
Right.
So
I think you'd like it.
Maybe I would. But I think the human aspect of this Lord of the Rings show is what probably is going to be the most interesting.
Right.
And the politics of the Numenorians.
That's bold of you to say, because the politics were arguably what people like least about the Star Wars prequels. I was like, but you got to be fair. Those movies also spent a lot of time with politics, and it was pretty boring.
Well, and it's also like it's easy to say that, but that doesn't mean politics isn't a bad word.
No,
right?
no.
Like, people love the politics in
Game of Thrones. Yeah, that's what.
And this will be largely the same. The Numenorians is different houses of Numenor vying for power, sort of thing.
Great, and then we'll have that Mandalore show. It'll be also about different houses vying for power. It's almost like everything that's been done has been done before and will be done again.
Nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new. All the stories have been told. Okay. So that covers most of the major stuff. We can save some of the Lucasfilm Games announcements. We can have an offshoot podcast. Maybe we'll do that in the next week or so. In the meantime, let's talk about WandaVision. Just to kind of keep up with what's going on, what's new. This is kind of a fresh story. The Harry Potter one was also fresh today, but WandaVision happening now. One of the things that we were talking about earlier, Jeremy, really interesting. Again, this kind of meta story that's been fascinating me since the beginning of the streaming stuff is this the way that they release their episodes, right? Mm-hmm. I still don't think Disney Plus has it right. This idea of releasing it at midnight Pacific is stupid. I don't think that doesn't help like create a community around that, but whatever. We can't wrap back to that. But Marvel Studios specifically spoke to this. Feige spoke to this idea about a week-to-week release method, and he basically said that he sees the films as that's their event movies, right? Right. You go out to see them; these are event movies. They wanted the shows to be the same thing. It's event watching, and that means the same day every week, and it creates an event over multiple weeks instead of over a weekend. Right. And then we've talked about this. I don't want to beat this to death, but I think we all agree here that the weekly release method is the superior method. I think we can at this point can mostly agree on that. I think. Yes. No.
Well, I mean, for the way that we consume this type of stuff, yes. Mm-hmm. I can certainly understand why other people would prefer to binge, though.
There's a lot of people that, again, WandaVision, another example. The Boys, another example from earlier late last year. Some people really hate the week-to-week method. They want to binge their TV.
Well, it's true. I know people, like a decent amount of people, that choose to wait until the season is over and then binge the entire thing.
This is what I always tell the people who don't like this method. It's like, you can do that. You just have to wait till your release date is now at the end of when all the conversation's over. But the binge method creates no conversation because I can't talk to you about where you how far are you in? Right. You start losing differentiation between which episode is which. This happened when we were reviewing the Iron Fists and the Daredevils and stuff. It's like we're like, yeah, it was good about three. The first 4 episodes were good, and there was some good stuff in there, and then the next 3 were okay and whatever. But we couldn't identify one. We don't remember the episode titles. And I think Disney is hyper aware of the conversation that goes on around their products online and whatever. And they want to maximize it. It is ultimately comes down to $1 thing. Sure. It also keeps people subscribed for longer, right? Honestly, Netflix is kind of like the kind of the only one who's kind of still championing the binge model, But we've mentioned before this hybrid model of releasing multiple episodes at once at the beginning and then going week to week is, I think, the sweet spot. But anyway, that's a kind of, again, the meta conversation. Around WandaVision specifically, we're 3 episodes in. Let's talk full spoilers because the show needs it. Not that there's a lot to talk about, but maybe to speculate about. I'll just ask you guys first, what are your guys' overall impressions? Are you liking the show? I know that's gotten some, mixed messaging or mixed reception out there. Jim?
I've seen just the first 2 episodes. I know it changes, I guess, a little bit in the 3rd episode. But yeah, I understand what people are saying, how it's kind of an unsuspecting and it's treated, like a comedy show or whatever. Mm-hmm.
Sitcom, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm not over the moon about it or anything like that. I think it's interesting. It's cool seeing these characters interact and act this way. I get that there's this this overarching mystery, and we get clues and little bits and pieces here and there, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I just gotta watch it, maybe one or 2 episodes to really know how I feel about it, I guess.
The 3rd episode, I think if you're not into it by the 3rd episode, I don't think you're into it. Is my opinion.
I'd agree with that. So we'll talk about it without discussing the 3rd episode, but I would say that I am over the moon about this show. I'm really enjoying it. Mm-hmm. I love the mystery, like you mentioned, Jeremy. I guess part of it is, though, with having familiarity with the comics really helps in this situation.
Yeah, it does.
If somebody just is familiar with the Marvel movies, I can see them being lost and frustrated.
Especially if you only like the Marvel movies, maybe you're younger and have never seen these sitcoms that the show is based off of.
Or that, yeah.
Right? This might be completely alien to some to a younger audience. What even is this? Because it takes the bit of this is a quote unquote sitcom. It goes 100% with it. Right. The first episode is called Filmed in Front of a Live Studio Audience. The first two didn't have titles when they were first released, but they do have them now. And like it was actually filmed in front of a live studio audience, and then laugh tracks were added to the second and third episodes, kind of like as it went on in time. But like they take the shtick so serious. I love it. I'm so into this kind of vibe that they're putting off here. I can get why you might be frustrated that you have to wait a week for a 22-minute episode, but like, hey man, that was what the deal.
A 22-minute episode with 8 minutes of credits.
Yeah. I mean,
been noted. Like,
sure, I guess, but 22-minute episode is the length of a half an hour with commercials, right?
Yeah, no.
So I think that's what they're going for, right? It's
well, yeah, it's supposed to mirror a sitcom, right?
Right. So if you had a longer than 22 minutes, it would be kind of like you're now stretching and they already are. It does. I don't want to nitpick. I think that the runtime is going to extend as we get later into the series, but I think it's hilarious. Like I think the show's very funny. Like and the chemistry between Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany is like palpable. Like you can cut it with a knife. It's so good. Does that little knife mean it's thick? I guess, but if you can cut it, it means it's there too. So I go
palpable means it's like tangible.
Yeah,
like...
yeah. So anyway, I'm really digging it. Like, is there anything specific that's like that you're not liking? Because I'm liking the mysteries as well, by the way.
Yeah, I just have nothing. I have no like care in kind of what's going on. That's kind of where I'm at.
Right,
it hasn't hooked you yet.
So I guess it's speculation for not spoiling the show, but spoilers for what the show could be setting up. So if you don't want to know that, skip ahead. But we don't know anything, obviously. But it seems to me we've been talking about this for a long time. For basically since Wanda was announced and the X-Men and Fox was acquired. Well, maybe not that far back. When Fox was acquired,
around there.
We talked about the possibility of the reverse House of M. Using Wanda to create the mutants instead of erase them. It really seems like they're setting up Wanda to be her own villain, like her own worst enemy in this specific case. She seems to be more aware, I think, than she maybe lets on. There's a specific moment in the third episode that is very similar to the rewind moment from the second episode.
Right.
That I think is really creepy. People have used Lynchian to describe it in certain cases. I think there's certain moments that definitely feel like that. It's creepy, but there's substance there. There's something that's trying to be said. It's more than just recreating a sitcom. There's like just the trapping itself has its own kind of message, and you can kind of start parsing it. It's really interesting. And then obviously the inclusion of S.W.O.R.D. is kind of where things get even more kind of like back to the MCU, I think.
Yeah, no, it's hard to talk about the show. Because it's such a novel concept. It's a show within a show within a show sort of thing.
Well, yeah.
I do agree with you though. It does seem like Wanda is being more deliberate than in House of M. But you have to remember also House of M is her at the end of that journey, right? Like she's lost it at that point and she no longer has control, whereas she started with control. Her powers are the powers to alter reality, and that's a very broad brush, right? Right,
and they've never really dove deep into her abilities in the movies. Like it was always just like wave her red hands and stuff happens.
It's
or whatever.
Basically telekinesis, but then also in Age of Ultron, she got in their heads, right?
Yeah,
that's as far as it's gone, really.
Yeah,
but they've hinted at it, right? Like she overpowers Vision in Civil War.
She's crucial in to stopping Thanos.
She almost kills Thanos in Endgame, right?
Yeah.
That's when Rain Fire happens, right? So like they've hinted at it, and that's one of the things, the subtle hints at Wanda's power. That's one of the things I like about the show is the subtlety. Like there's little things you'll notice. The laugh track doesn't like sync up properly sometimes.
Yeah.
Like the audience laughs at a point where they shouldn't be, and it's weird for the characters, and it's so subtle, it's so small, and I think it's a gradual thing. I don't think it happens a lot in the first episode, and it gradually happens in the second.
The way that they play with the aspect ratio is really fun too.
Yep.
Like just the way that this becomes the first true Marvel TV show is really cool because like they're using also TV as the medium to kind of play with. So I think there's kind of some fun meta-ness to that too. But they just really do a really cool job of using the tools at their disposal, the aspect ratio, the types of lenses they use, that to create this feeling. And then when those things are broken, it becomes that more obvious, and you can start seeing through kind of the gaps, right? Because there are gaps, and like even in the first episode, when he's like, what it is exactly that we do here, you know, like
Yeah.
at his job. Like it's played for laughs, and it's all fits kind of that like perfect sitcom humor that I think it makes the show very funny. But it's asking questions that you as the audience are like, yeah, like why how is Vision even here?
Right.
You know, like I feel like that's the biggest thing that people aren't even talking about. Like, is he how did Wanda just recreate Vision out of with her powers? And if so, what does that mean? Like, there's so many. I think there's a lot of kind of like unanswered questions. Obviously, this is the first show in a while that's been one of those kind of like community fan like picking it apart, find the mysteries. I that's the week to week stuff that gets me going. I love it. I love the speculation. What's going on? What does this mean? What is the what is the significance of like the red helicopter and the red bleeping like blinking light? Is it just that she's called Scarlet Witch? Like, is it more than that? Sometimes it's just that. You know, I really like the commercials. We haven't talked about the commercials.
Commercials are hilarious. Yes.
Yeah. And how they're retelling kind of her story, like as a character.
They're just kind of winking at things, like they're referencing moments in her past or just moments in MCU history,
right.
I guess.
Well, I guess in her specifically, I think mostly.
So far,
yeah.
It's only 2 episodes, so we can't really.
Well, yeah, we don't mention the third one, but suffice to say they I think they follow a similar trend, right?
Yeah.
They do all feature the same people too, which is interesting. There's speculation that those are maybe her parents, but people don't know. We don't know. There's no answers to that.
Can't be. Magneto hasn't been introduced yet.
See, I feel like that's really hard. And like, if we're talking about the X-Men, and if she's able to bring the X-Men into it, I think losing. So there's been 2 ways that people have talked about it. You talked about the X-Men as like a new phenomenon, and mutations are new, and that they haven't been around for a long time, right? Like they were in the X-Men comic,
right.
World War II, stuff like that.
Sure.
I think losing the World War II stuff really hurts. Like having that history, then they'd be able to kind of to play off of the Holocaust and that kind of stuff. Doesn't. It's hard to say. I just think it's such a strong element, especially Magneto's character specifically, that to remove that is like, I don't even know. First of all, I don't know how you introduce Magneto with the existence of Wanda and Pietro, and then and make that make sense. I don't know. I honestly don't know how you do that. But even if you could, removing a major part of his history, of that character's history, I think it's one of those things that's important. I don't know if you can remove that element from Magneto and still have the same character.
Well, it's not the same character without that backstory. But I mean, like, it's Scarlet Witch. Her powers are reality altering. There are no wrong answers. She could make the reality whatever she wants. Like, she could create a new reality where she and Pietro were, and Pietro could come back for
he's for sure coming back.
So and Magneto could be their father, and they could be actually mutants in this world instead of having these superpowers. And she would just create the world that we're familiar with from the comics, but entirely new to the MCU. I don't think it's gonna be exactly that. I'm saying she could.
I mean, yeah, you could. That's true. I'm trying to think of it in this constraints of like, how do you sell that to the audience? How do you pitch that to the everyday Marvel fan?
Well, ask me at the end of WandaVision.
Yeah, I guess. Jeremy, is there anything that's like really sticking out to you in WandaVision that's like, obviously you haven't seen the 3rd episode, so that hasn't like engaged you in the same way, but is there something that like that is sticking out to you as something that's like, I want to come back for that?
Not really.
Okay. See that, and that I think that's a sentiment that like there's a, I don't know, decent chunk of people online that seem to be having that same feeling.
No, I get the setup, and I land on the side of like I kind of understand what they're doing, so it doesn't seem interesting to me, even though they're trying to lay out clues. Like, I just don't care to do like the work to like piece things together
to think about
because I just don't like, why am I caring about what's going on here? Like, it's obviously
you care about Wanda and Vision as characters, I guess. Like, that's the first thing. If you care about them as characters, you can be more invested, I think.
Oh, for sure. I understand that it's heavily taken from the recent comic from Tom King, which was a very refreshing take on the whole thing, which they're clearly doing here, and I think it's grasping a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like, coming from someone who's like, I don't have a particular fondness for 50s or 60s or 70s sitcoms. You know, I know the sitcom formula because there's modern interpretations of it. You know, I'm sure there'll be a Friends-esque style episode or Seinfeld, whatever, in this series. But like, and it'll feel a lot closer to what we know of this of the sitcom thing. But I'm appreciating it for what they're doing without having like the nostalgia for those shows. You know, and like I don't think you need the nostalgia. I just think it's like it's fun to know that they're taking care to recreate this stuff, and like that's all you need to know. I feel like.
Well, it's all you need. I'm sure it adds to it. I'm sure
Yeah.
if you have that nostalgia and you watch those shows, it only adds to what you're experiencing there.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, that's just us. Like we're young enough that we didn't watch those shows, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, I suppose. But at the same time, we still have like that's what I mean. Like, there's a younger version of us that out there that does like,
Yeah.
they don't. This doesn't do anything for them, right? I mean, the kind of week to week format of sitcoms where you know there's really only a few threads that are like playing from week to week that you can play off of here, right? That's very not modern television, right? Modern TV is like super serialized. This is serialized, but in a not obvious way. I don't know. It is hard to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, it like it's not, but it is, but it isn't. You know. Okay. Anyway, that's WandaVision. Any other final thoughts on that?
Keep it coming. That's all I can
I'm
say.
excited for it. Just seriously, just like change the release time from Thursday at midnight to like Friday at like 8 p.m. And then now everyone can come together and watch the show at the same time. This is not a bold statement. I don't like HBO's been doing this on Sunday nights for literally decades. You know, like it's not a crazy idea to say, hey, Game of Thrones comes on at 10 o'clock on Sunday. Everyone got together to watch Game of Thrones, right? If people are loving The Mandalorian, have them all get together. You could even probably steal Sundays from HBO's if you really wanted
Maybe.
to.
Yeah. Who knows?
You know, so I just think a missed opportunity. Maybe they have a kind of like an unspoken agreement. They're like, whoa. HBO's for Sundays for HBO. Back off. You know. Okay. I think that covers it. Is there anything that I didn't touch on there, guys, that you guys wanted me to cover today?
I don't think so.
I don't think
It's
so.
been cold out. It's been a little cold. Our dishwasher's not working.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It does. Okay. Follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/TowerBabblecast. Head over to our website, towerbabble.ca, to find everything that we do. We record these live. You can subscribe on YouTube, on Twitch. Periscope is going away, but it's just being blended into Twitter, so it'll just be just follow us on Twitter and you're covered. And come join the chat. It's always fun to chat with people during the show. We do it irregularly, which makes it hard to do. But if you follow us on Twitter, you'll usually get enough heads up that you can maybe find some time. And I know everyone's global, so it doesn't always work, but we try. Anyway, the other thing is head over to patreon.com/TowerBabblecast because that's how you help support the show. Dan, what are we doing for? Actually, you know what? No, not Dan. Jeremy, what are we doing for our film club episode this month?
We're watching a film.
Yeah, but which film are we watching?
The Rocketeer.
The Rocketeer. Okay, this is a movie that we've been talking about for a long time. Why should people be excited to watch The Rocketeer?
Well, it's a pretty old movie. Came out in 1991.
You're not doing a job. You're not doing a job. I want to watch the movie.
But it's just a fun movie about someone discovering a jetpack,
Right.
and adventure unfolds from there.
Okay. Well, that is exclusive to our Patreon subscribers, and we do a film club every month. Last month we did Train Spotting, and tell you what, that's a good movie. It turns out it's a good movie. We really like talking about that. So you can find all of our backlog of film club episodes if you subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/TowerBabblecast. Anyway, if you're still listening, we appreciate you sticking around this long, and we will be back soon with more Tower Babble.
See ya.